Tonight, impeachment inquiry investigators hope to have the chance to question a top lawyer at the National Security Council, but he had other plans. The latest from Capitol Hill. And tomorrow marks the highly anticipated off-year election in Virginia. What's at stake in the Commonwealth and what it could mean for the rest of the country in 2020. Plus, a win for criminal justice reform as Oklahoma approves the largest single-day sentencing commutation in U.S. history. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Four more no-shows on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Ben Kennedy in for John Jessup. None of the White House officials who were called to testify today in the impeachment probe did.
The Trump administration again ignoring subpoenas from the House Intelligence Committee. Abigail Robertson joins us from Capitol Hill with the details. Abigail, what can you tell us about these four no-shows?
Well, these are four top White House officials. Many of them work in national security, and there's one who is a budget official. And amongst them was top national security lawyer John Eisenberg, who, according to a previous witness testimony, may have been the person who suggested moving the transcript of that phone call that started this whole thing to that secure server. So House Democrats very much want to speak with him and hear from him. And House Democrats say that his decision to defy the congressional subpoena, as well as the three others not showing up today, just further proves that they have something to hide. Take a look.
This will only further add to the body of evidence on a potential obstruction of Congress charge against the president. Indeed, in the Nixon impeachment, there was an article of impeachment based on the obstruction of Congress that itemized each of the subpoenas that the White House had defied. Well, today we have four additional subpoenas to add to the list of a potential charge involving the President of the United States and his obstruction of our constitutional duties.
Now, these witnesses have orders from the White House not to testify, and they say they're waiting for the federal judge to rule whether or not they have to oblige these congressional subpoenas.
Now, Abigail, this whole inquiry circles back to the president's phone call with his Ukrainian counterpart and the whistleblower's report that followed. The president has been demanding to hear from the whistleblower. The big question is there a chance that could actually happen?
Well, whistleblowers are protected under federal law, so I don't think, unless the whistleblower decides to come forward, that will happen. Now, according to his or her lawyer, the whistleblower's lawyer says that they have offered Republicans a chance to directly ask questions of the whistleblower. I believe it would be in a written format. So Republicans like House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy say with so much at stake here, though, they want more. They want to directly question this whistleblower. Take a look.
What I'm open to, when you're talking about the removal of the President of the United States, undoing democracy, undoing what the American public had voted for, I think that individual should come before the committee. He could come down to the basement, but he needs to answer the questions. We need an openness that people understand this. Remember what you're asking. You're going to change the course, the very fabric of democracy today, based upon someone wrote a written question of somebody that wasn't even on the phone call, that had hearsay, even though we all know what the transcript said?
Well, I think ultimately it will be up to the whistleblower to decide if they want to come forward and publicly reveal themselves.
And Abby, what else can we expect on impeachment this week?
Well, I think we're going to see more of these transcripts released from the closed-door testimony. We saw a few of them released today. I also think we're going to start to see more of the framework as this moves into the public testimony phase. I think we're hopefully going to get some dates as to who and when we will hear from some of the people that they've already brought forth, and we'll get a chance to directly hear their stories in more public testimonies, and we'll have kind of more of an idea of the timeline. Right now, House Democrats haven't really committed to when this will be wrapped up. Who knows now if it will be wrapped up by Thanksgiving, but I think we're going to start seeing some of these people come forward and hearing from them ourselves.
Abigail on Capitol Hill, thank you so much. Well, David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst, joins us now for more. David, Abigail was talking about these four no-shows. What do you make of this?
Well, it's not surprising, really. And, you know, once again, what Adam Schiff said today, and something that Abby tossed to in her sound that we heard about this obstruction of Congress. This is what part of those articles of impeachment could include: abuse of power by the president, obstruction of Congress as well, because of all of these no-shows. And we expect to have a couple of more no-shows tomorrow by White House officials. And then John Bolton's supposed to testify on Thursday. Most likely he's not going to testify as well. So this is going to be a continuing conversation.
Today, Adam Schiff, he released a transcript of Marie Yovanovitch, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. She says she was told to tweet support of President Trump to save her job. David, how damaging is this testimony to President Trump?
Well, we should step back for a moment, and let's remember, this is what she is saying, and when I say she is saying, there's a lot of hearsay here. In other words, these are conversations by people who thought this and may have implied that. Once again, Trump goes back to the phone call and says, well, he calls it a perfect phone call. Maybe he needs to step back from a perfect phone call. But he says, look, if Zelensky didn't think there was anything at all on that phone call and there was no problem, then what's the problem? Everybody else seems to be kind of like saying what could have happened, what might not have happened. And that's kind of the argument here. And so anyhow, she does talk about in these transcripts that she feels bullied by Trump and Giuliani, and I think that's interesting, and that'll make some of the headlines.
Now, David, let's say the impeachment does go to the Senate. Looks like they do have the number for the votes in the House. Many presidential candidates will be pulled off the campaign trail. They'll act as jurors. What could this mean for 2020?
Well, it could hurt Elizabeth Warren if it happens in January, not in December. Having said that, Mitch McConnell, I think it's pretty clear that he's going to make quick work of this in the Senate. We're talking a couple of days at the most. So I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact. If it does, maybe Elizabeth Warren in January.
David, we are exactly 1 year out from this general election. How much time do Democrats have to either decide to impeach or not?
So I've circled the week of December 16th on my calendar, and I know it's the week before Christmas. You're going to Florida, right?
I'm going to Florida.
Well, there you go. So we'll tell you how it works out. But I think the articles of impeachment and the big situation with the vote in Congress by the House could happen that week. Abby talked about possibly by Thanksgiving. Not that she's saying that, but congressional vote, it's not going to happen by Thanksgiving. December 16th. Watch for that week. If not, if it goes into January, that's a whole problem for the Democrats, because then you're talking 10 months later, you can just vote them out of office, and that makes it politically a problem for Democrats.
David Rhoda, good to have you back. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, David. Well, there is a lot of talk of 2020, of course, but tomorrow voters in 5 states will cast their ballots in some very important off-year elections. In Louisiana, Mississippi, and Kentucky, voters will choose governors as well as many state lawmakers. And voters in New Jersey and Virginia will elect all of their assembly seats. In Virginia, where right now Republicans hold a one-person majority in the House and Senate, there's a chance Democrats could flip control. And Delegate Todd Gilbert is the current majority leader in the Virginia House, and he joins us now for more. Todd, good to have you. Outside groups, even celebrities, have spent a lot of time in your state. 2020 candidates, Vice President Mike Pence, they've been there in the last few days. Have you ever seen this much attention on Virginia politics?
No, everybody from Alec Baldwin to Joe Biden has been here in the last couple of weeks. As you said, Vice President Pence was here for Republicans. Just the attention and, frankly, the amount of money coming in, mostly from the Democratic side. Billionaires like George Soros and Tom Steyer, the environmentalist, and Michael Bloomberg, all pouring millions of dollars into Virginia races to try and reshape our state and ultimately reshape the country.
Now, Todd, break it down for us. What exactly is at stake tomorrow?
Well, for me, it's everything I care about in the world, except for my family. And I think that's true of many Virginians. We are seeing on display in Virginia right now the epitome of the leftist agenda. It is the most extreme version of what the left has to offer in terms of public policy. Just this year in Virginia, we saw a bill that caught national attention and caused national outrage that would have allowed a woman to request an abortion right up until the moment of birth. That was on the heels of the New York law that passed. Nearly became law here in Virginia, but for that one vote majority in each body that Jenna mentioned. Gun confiscation, turning law-abiding gun owners into felons, a Virginia version of the Green New Deal. All of those things were proposed this year, and they stand to be enacted into law if Democrats take over the legislature.
This weekend, Joe Biden said, and this is a quote, "As Virginia goes, so goes the nation." Could Virginia be a bellwether for 2020?
I think it's absolutely a bellwether, and that's why you're seeing so much attention from politicians, celebrities, from those billionaires. They think if they can flip Virginia, they can put the president on his heels and continue their reshaping, remaking of America as they see it. I do believe that Tuesday is a bellwether for the nation. I know the president was already tweeting about it. I think he has high hopes for our chances. This is a low turnout event generally, and so that's part of the reason you're seeing all this money, all this attention, is to try to raise turnout on both sides.
Final question for you, Todd. Some experts say tomorrow's vote will come down to how people feel about abortion and gun control. Why is that?
Well, these are hot button issues. I mean, things that really motivate people on both sides of the issue. We hope that freedom-loving Virginians, people who love life, people who love liberty, will share the horror that we experienced this year when we saw that abortion agenda on display. And we hope they will be heavily motivated by the notion that you could take a law-abiding person who lawfully purchased a firearm or a firearm accessory and make that person into a felon and subject them to prison time overnight over an item they lawfully purchased to protect themselves and their families. We hope that really motivates people on the Republican side. And again, this is the most impactful thing in a generation. If we lose these things on Tuesday, we will not get them back, perhaps in our lifetime.
Delegate Todd Gilbert, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Iran is strengthening its nuclear program today, announcing it's running more advanced centrifuges, twice as many as allowed by the 2015 agreement it made with world leaders. This happens as Iran celebrates the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Crowds in Iran marked the day by taking to the streets to chant "Death to America."
And CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. Chris, good to see you. What do you make of Iran's announcement?
Well, it's very significant, Jenna, because it really does pass a threshold
for the Iranian regime, and it seems like they're just saying to the world, particularly to the United States, we don't care if you're going to have these sanctions. We're going to pursue our goal of having a nuclear weapon, even though they say this is for peaceful purposes. And they're violating the agreement they made in 2015. And I think it's very significant that Iran is here on the 40th anniversary of the day when they had those U.S. hostages from the U.S. Embassy. Very significant, I think, threshold that they're passing right now, regardless of what the world says, regardless of what the U.S. or Europe say.
Now, Chris, the U.S. today is condemning the move from Iran. The White House is saying it will continue with those crippling sanctions. But what about the countries still in the 2015 nuclear deal? How are they holding Iran accountable?
Well, actually, Ben, I'm not sure they are holding Iran accountable right now, even though they want to. They're saying they don't want Iran to pass these thresholds, one of them being, enriching uranium up to 20%. And the way the physics goes, that's very close to 90%, which is uranium grade or nuclear grade uranium. And so I don't think they're able to really hold back Iran from this. Iran says they're going to go ahead regardless of what the Europeans say. I really think it's the U.S. that holds the cards here in this game of Thrones, basically with Iran and its nuclear ambitions.
Chris, what does this all mean for Israel?
It's an existential threat. We were at a summit last night, a Christian media summit, with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he has been sounding the alarm, shouting it from the housetops for literally decades about Iran's ambitions. And he was saying that this poses an existential threat, and said once more that Israel will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Now, how they do that, whether it's a cyber warfare, whether it's a military strike, which has been speculated for well over 15 years, happens and all. But they will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They consider that an existential threat against the Jewish state. Iran boasts regularly that they're going to destroy Israel. And Israel and its leaders take Iran at its word. And that will be the #1 goal of Israel, to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Chris, it's always so great to get your insights. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Ben.
Well, a big day for some prisoners. Up next, how this one state is making criminal justice reform history.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Freedom tonight for a historic number of nonviolent offenders in Oklahoma. More than 400 prisoners were released today in the largest single mass commutation in the country's history. A criminal justice reform law signed earlier this year retroactively reduced sentences for those who committed low-level crimes, leading to today's release. The commutation will save taxpayers about $12 million.
And for years, mandatory prison sentences have been tying judges' hands and denying deserving inmates a shot at a second chance. Matthew Charles is one of them.
His story highlights the damage some mandatory minimums can do. But as Amber Strong shows us, criminal justice reform has given Charles a life after prison.
Do you believe in miracles? What about second chances? Matthew Charles certainly does. In less than 1 month, he went from a jail cell to the State of the Union address. That road to Washington, however, includes a criminal past that started here in Tennessee.
In 1995, I was arrested by the United States Marshals for selling crack cocaine.
He was convicted and sentenced to 35 years. But before he boarded that bus to prison, something happened.
It was in February 1996 that I confessed Christ and received him as my personal Lord and Savior. And started reading, I just started getting into my comfort zone to get my mind, based on God and what I was reading. It was like I just started crying like a baby, and I hadn't cried since probably I was a baby, because I had a hard life and I was a hard man.
But squaring things with the Lord didn't mean absolution from the feds, so off to prison he went. Over the next 21 years, Charles became a law clerk, a mentor, and kept himself from a single disciplinary infraction. Then came the good news.
God moved miraculously. It was in 2016 when U.S. Judge Kevin Sharp granted my reduction of sentence.
And just like that, he was headed home. Charles enjoyed his newfound freedom. He ate at his favorite restaurants, found a church home, and even started volunteering at a pantry, enjoying all life had to offer as a free man. But it wouldn't last. 2 years later, Charles was back behind bars. Not because he did anything wrong. According to the court, it was a mistake, and he shouldn't have been released in the first place.
I counted that as a blessing of God as well, even being released for that 2-year period.
Even the judge regretted sending him back, telling Charles at the time she had no choice. Her hands were tied. Meanwhile, 700 miles away in Washington,
you can actually make a difference in people's lives. Isn't that what we're supposed to be about up here?
We incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. It's a stain on our democracy.
A movement called the First Step Act had begun, and Charles would be its first beneficiary. He recalls the January phone conversation with his attorneys.
She was like, are you ready? And I was like, ready for what? She was like, you going home. Judge signed your immediate release this morning saying time served. So I was like, really shocked.
That same judge?
Yes, the same judge, Judge Trauger, who actually stated on the record that her hands were tied, but she had to reimpose the sentence. Yes.
Wow, that's a full circle.
Yes.
Full circle moment. In a way, Charles describes as miraculous, President Trump, along with Democrats and Republicans here on the Hill, accomplished something unimaginable, both prison and sentencing reform.
All right, Matthew Charles.
Matthew, it is my honor to see you. That's all you. Oh.
So Mr. Charles went to Washington to thank some of those responsible for his release.
I got a text from the White House. I saw the story that actually appeared.
Oh, okay.
And as I am right now, I cried.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Because this is what makes this job.
Yes,
after everything else. Yes, that's a lot. This makes it good.
His thank you tour included the State of the Union address, Matthew, where the president turned the tables.
Thank you, Matthew. Welcome home.
It wasn't just politicians. Pro bono attorneys, like former bank robber turned law professor Sean Hopwood, had joined the fight. Reform groups also worked feverishly behind the scenes.
We know the faces and the names of the people who are affected by these laws, and we're really glad that lawmakers are getting the chance to see them too.
That's because Charles's story is a familiar one, especially when it comes to communities of color. Under old laws, someone convicted of selling 5 grams of crack cocaine faced a mandatory 5 years. It would take 500 grams of powder cocaine for the same conviction. The Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 reduced the disparity And the First Step Act made it retroactive. So you're back in your old stomping grounds. Back in Nashville, Charles and I returned to the pantry, aware of the whirlwind, from prisoner to free man to prisoner and home again. So you're a free man now? For good this time?
Okay, that's correct.
What do you do now?
Well, I'm just taking it day by day, looking forward to see what doors of opportunity avail themselves for me. I know that God placed within my heart to help people, and I want to continue to do that.
And that's his plan. Share his story, help those he left behind, and proclaim the miracle of second chances. Amber Strong, CBN News in Nashville, Tennessee.
Coming up after the recent break, after a recent stint in the hospital, former President Jimmy Carter returns to his home church to teach Sunday school. That's next.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
And a good story to share. Former President Jimmy Carter jumped back into his Sunday school routine over the weekend.
Yeah, he is resilient. The 95-year-old was recently released from the hospital after a fall broke his pelvis. And yesterday he returned to his regular role of Sunday school teacher. And we understand his lesson focused on the promise of eternity.
So I'm going to live again. After I die, don't know what form I'll take or anything, but I have confidence that there is a God, that He's all-powerful, that He keeps His promises, and He's promised us life after death.
Amen. Well, Carter also spoke about the book of Job. The former president has been teaching Sunday school since he was just a teen.
Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great evening.